Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another week of our Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm Lesley Kaplan, delighted to welcome you here today with you joining live, which, as we know, is always great because that way you get to share your details in the chat and be actively and instantly inspired by our speaker. If you're watching the recording, we welcome you too, and we look forward to seeing you join us live on another occasion too. So, as you know, this series was started to inspire Am Yisrael during our difficult and challenging time, which of course we are doing. And at the same time, we aim to give exposure to Israeli individuals, businesses, and organizations who are all making their mark and making a difference. And Baruch Hashem, we have so many of them. We've had some awesome speakers throughout this time, and we have a great speaker today. I would like to also, firstly, before I introduce our speaker, say thank you to ACI, our co-host, as well as to our sponsor for the month, Kim Bash. So thank you very much, Israel's real estate matchmaker. So today we have a fabulous guest who I'm going to add as the spotlight now, who I've known for many years, Rivkah Lambert Adler, I'm delighted to see her again. We haven't seen each other. We were just talking earlier for about probably 6-7 years. Rivkah used to be our neighbor when we were both living in Ma'ale Adumim. We were literally in the building next door to each other. So it was great. And for anyone that knows Rivkah and her husband, Rav Ilan, they're a power couple. Wherever they go, they make their mark. That wasn't officially on your bio, Rivkah, but I added that as an unofficial. Literally, I call you guys the power couple because wherever you go, you make your mark. You're so proactive. You see the need for something, some activity that needs to be done, and you literally introduce it to the community or wherever you're living. So people definitely feel your presence wherever you are. In addition to that, Rivkah's official bio is she's a writer, she's an adult educator, she's a book reviewer, and she specializes in Jewish and Israeli content. Many of us read her articles almost every week in the Jerusalem Post, which I love reading. She's also been published in other places, the HuffPost, the Moment magazine, and she's also an editor of the books 10 from the Nations, Torah Awakening Amongst Non-Jews, and Lightening Up the Nations. So, Rivkah, we're delighted to see you here. You're an expert in basically Jewish and Israeli content. So please take it away, inspire us, share with us who is the Rivkah Lambert Adler. You know, we see you in the press, but tell us behind the scenes, your Aliyah story, and take it away. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you, Lesley, for inviting me. I have to tell you, I am so much a night owl. This is extremely unusual for me to be up and productive at this hour. But as you said, my name is Rivkah Lambert Adler, and my plan is I want to take you on a journey through my life and end with 3 life lessons. So I'll start by saying that I was born to a Jewish mother, but I grew up in a totally assimilated Jewish home. I was very, very marginally Jewish. I studied for many years at the University of Maryland without really an awareness that that particular campus had a very strong Jewish presence. I did I did date a Jewish guy all through college, and I married him after college. And then I got divorced about a half an hour after we got married. And I moved to Baltimore, which was about an hour north of where I had been studying. And I was temporarily living with some friends who were medical students at the time, but I wanted to find, I didn't know very much about being Jewish, but I had this feeling that if I was going to live with a stranger, that somehow it would be safer if I would live with a Jewish stranger. And I don't know where I got that idea from, but that was my idea. So at the time, there was a publication in Baltimore called the Baltimore Jewish Times, which used to have, this was like a million years ago, it used to have classified ads in the back for people looking for roommates. And so I started to read this newspaper, and I had never heard of much of the kind of things that they were talking about. The only Jewish holidays I knew were the ones that are in a secular calendar. Like I knew about Hanukkah, I knew about Passover, and I knew about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That was it. Anyway, I had just finished graduate school. I had just earned a master's degree, And I saw this little ad for an Introduction to Judaism class. And I decided I'm going to take this class because I know how to be a student. And to me, it was, I was in this period of transition coming out of a long-term relationship and a short-term marriage. And I was going to take this class. And it turned out that I was the only Jew in the class because the class was actually designed for people who were dating and seriously thinking about marrying a Jew. But it was like exactly at my level because I knew virtually nothing. And I went on to have an adult bat mitzvah through the Reform congregation. And I joined this Reform congregation. And this is the most explicitly Jewish thing I could ever imagine doing in my life. And in Baltimore in those years, I don't know if it still exists, but there was every summer, every weekend was a different ethnic festival. So there was like the Polish festival, the Italian festival, whatever. And there was this at the end of the summer, like Labor Day weekend, there was the Jewish festival. And there's just one booth that says, test your Jewish IQ. So now I have had an adult bat mitzvah. I have been going to this Reform congregation. And I think that I'm basically like ready to be a member of the Sanhedrin because I know stuff. And I take this little 10-question Jewish IQ test, which I completely fail because I know nothing now. Like now it's funny to me, but at the time, I was very humbled. So the rabbi, who will not be a surprise, like I didn't even know what this was, but it was obviously a Kiruv rabbi who was intending to bring Jews closer to tradition, asked me, do I want to study with someone? And I had this crazy idea that he was going to match me with a man because I thought only men knew Jewish things back then. And so I agreed, and they matched me with this young religious woman who I understood was going through cancer treatment because she was like 23 years old, pregnant with her second kid, and she was wearing a wig, and I felt so terrible. Of course, I found out later in my journey that wasn't what was going on. Anyway, over the next couple of years, without consciously making a decision I did take on Torah observance, and I got married again. I started a PhD program, and I had a few kids, and then I got divorced again. So now I'm alone, twice divorced. I'm a mother with young children. I have an advanced secular education, and I want to get married again. So now I understand that there are people who will help you get married because, like I've been religious for a very short time, but I learned this. And so I learned about this shadchan that was specialized in what were called at the time older singles. I was at this point in my 30s, and I had this experience with him. I spent an hour on the phone with him and told him all about my journey and my dreams and my personality and all that stuff. And at the end of the conversation, he says to me, do you have any handicaps? So I'm thinking that he's asking, like, am I blind? Am I in a wheelchair? Am I missing a limb? Do I have some disease? Whatever. He said, like, for example, are you fat? And I was, and I am. And I said, I am. And he said, I don't think I can help you. And I felt really kind of shocked because I was like no fatter an hour later than I had been at the beginning of the conversation. We could have avoided that whole thing. Anyway, one thing led to another. I was telling a friend about this conversation the next morning, and she says, wait a minute. She says, I know someone for you. And through a very strange series of multiple introductions, my husband's name kept coming up. And so indeed, we met through multiple mutual friends. Last December, we celebrated 27 years together. So if you're paying attention so far in the story, I spent a lot of years earning academic degrees. I became religious. I was married 3 times. I also launched my career, and I worked in university administration for about 25 years. I loved every day of it. My last job, I was an assistant dean in the University of Maryland system. And about 4 years after earning my PhD, after Elon and I got married, I actually went back to graduate school to earn a second master's degree in Jewish history. But I never finished that degree because there was a core course that was required. It was a course in academic Bible studies that conflicted with my relatively new religious beliefs. And that was the final course that I needed for the degree. But I wasn't going to take it because I felt like it was in conflict with the relationship I had with Tanakh, with Torah. And so I never finished that degree. But I did continue to grow Jewishly in many other ways. And I say that in my Jewish life, I've had 4 great passions. So the first one, which came to me the very first year that I was very seriously exploring my Jewish self, is the role of women in Judaism. And I have to say that that first year, I spent a lot of time in tears. This would have been, this was the late 80s. I was so torn between the very strong pull that I felt towards a Torah life and what I, excuse me, what I perceived as the very limiting ideas of that were being taught about the role of women in Judaism. And I have a much deeper and more nuanced understanding now, even though there are some things that still bother me. But that was my first major passion, and it's still with me. And I still talk about these issues, write about these issues, and teach about them. The second major passion that came up in my Jewish life was Israel. And here's how it happened. I had, when Ilan and I got married in 1996, we came to Israel. For me, it was my first trip. He was actually born here to Holocaust, parents that survived the Holocaust, thank God. But he left when he was very young, and he had been back to Israel like 50 times or some crazy thing like that. But it was my first trip. So we got married in 1996 and I came, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, and I thought, like, Israel's nice, but my life was in Baltimore, and our lives were in Baltimore. He was a congregational rabbi. I was working at that point, I think, for the Jewish community, and our kids were in day school. And then came September 11th, 2001, and I promise you, I never had the thought before that I need to move to Israel. It never occurred to me. And in that day, I feel like I got this download of clarity. So I had studied Jewish history, as I mentioned, and all of a sudden I saw America, and my children are 4th generation Americans. So we don't have like a lot of immigrant experience in our family. But I understood with vivid clarity on September 11, 2001, that America was a host country for the Jewish people, and that it was, and this event indicated that it was time to go home. I tried to talk to my family about it. They were not on board with this. And so I started something that is called, in America, I don't know it's called a Chug Aliyah, which met for a number of years. Every month or so, we would bring in a speaker who spoke about some aspect of life in Israel, some aspect of making Aliyah. And I used to say that opportunity gave me a chance to channel my frustrated Aliyah energy. I always earned my living as an administrator. I was very good at organizing things. And this Chug Aliyah was one of the things I threw my heart and soul into, because I was obsessed with moving to Israel for a long time. During the second Intifada, we bought a small apartment. This was the very first apartment that we started with in Ma'ale Adumim, and we started coming on a regular basis. And it took 9 years of nudging my family to death, but we did finally get here in 2010. I couldn't work as a university administrator, which is what I did in America, because my Hebrew was rudimentary. The whole system was different. And as Lesley said, I did eventually find my career as a freelance journalist, which brought me back to my very early love of writing. And I also got involved in the Anglo community. So we lived for 9 years in Ma'ale Adumim. And I initiated a number of projects, some of which are still going on, both there and to in the current community. Right now, we live in Efrat for the last 5 years or so. So one of the things I noticed when I came to Israel, I'm a voracious reader, and I could not support my reading habit by going into used bookstores where books were used books were going for like 35 shekels. And this was going back almost 15 years. That's like $10. I couldn't keep doing that. So I started an English book swap. I started a project. All of these projects that I started came out of a need that I had for myself. And I was very happy to find people in my community that wanted to participate with me. So some of these I brought to Efrat in one form or another. I started a project called the Parsha Slam, which was originally designed to keep me occupied during the Hakafot on Simchas Torah. And thank you, Toby. And my husband and I started bringing speakers to Ma'ale Adumim. I was teaching Torah there. And in 2019, for various reasons, we moved from Ma'ale Adumim to Efrat, which is just south of Jerusalem, and we're very happy here. So now I've kind of scratched my itch when it comes to my passion for women in Judaism and also for Israel. Now we're here, we're settled more or less. And comes a third passion, which is this idea that we are living in very special times in Jewish history, that this passion for redemption, for Geula, for the end of days, for the messianic redemption really took hold. And I got very involved in learning and teaching whatever I could about it, which led to my fourth and current and perhaps final, I don't know, passion, which is teaching Torah to non-Jews. Now, I know that a lot of Jews believe that it's absolutely forbidden for non-Jews to learn Torah, but that's actually not true. And the truth is that passions 3 and 4, the obsession, that's how I go through life, is I develop an obsession and I dive very, very deeply into whatever fascinates me. They're very deeply connected because sharing the universal wisdom of Torah with people from the nations, people who are not born to the Jewish people, but who are interested in learning Torah, is actually what I've come to understand, an intrinsic part of what it means to be or Lagoyim, to be a light to the nations. So now I'm working part-time as a journalist, and I really focus on writing what I call Kiddush Hashem stories. So I know now I'm almost 15 years living in Israel. It's a very complicated place here. And sometimes people contact me and say, this terrible thing is going on, that terrible thing is going on. Somebody has to write about it. And I always say, I'm not the right person for that. I want to tell the good news stories of Israel. I want to tell the stories of people who are supporting, defending, strengthening, making life in Israel better. And I do because of my rudimentary Hebrew. I work in English. Excuse me. And so I'm always looking for stories of people who came to Israel and made a difference. And those are the stories that I like to tell for the Jerusalem Post, for other publications. And I'm working on a third book. So Lesley mentioned my first 2 books, and I'll just tell you very briefly what that's about. So when I started learning about this idea that there were actually non-Jews who wanted to hear something from Jews, because I grew up, you know that, because I told you 20 minutes ago, I didn't have any Jewish education as a child, but some things were transmitted. And I did get the impression that it was safer to be with Jews and that I ought to keep my distance from non-Jews. I definitely got that impression growing up. And so when I started writing for a publication that is called Israel 365, which has a particular outreach to Christian Zionists and people who come from a Christian background, but who love the land of Israel, love the God of Israel, love the Jewish people, love the Torah of Israel, what would happen is they would read the stories that I would write, and because they were so connected to Israel, they came to visit. This is pre-COVID that we're talking about. And they would say, oh, I'm coming to Israel, I want to meet you. And often that meant that they wanted to take my husband and I out for dinner in Jerusalem. So we always said yes. And I would ask them their story. Tell me your story. And many of them had fascinating stories of how they grew up kind of mainstream Christian and how they got turned on to the whole Israel piece. And so in 2017, I was going to write an article because I didn't, as a Jew, I had never heard of people like this, but it turns out that there are millions of them, and I didn't know that. And I thought, well, if I didn't know it, probably other Jews didn't know it either. So I was going to write an article, and I started doing a little research for an article, and I realized, there's a book in this. And so 10 from the Nations, Torah Awakening Among Non-Jews is all about the stories of people who are on what their language, they're on some kind of walk with Torah. Most of them are not Jewish. They're not going to become Jewish. They're learning, they're studying, and so forth. And I actually am very, very privileged. Once a week by Zoom, I teach a group of women who are somewhere in their journey, and I teach them some of the universal wisdom of Torah. I'm obviously not teaching them like the nuances of Jewish law as they apply to specifically to Jews, but Judaism and Torah have tremendous universal lessons that are good for all of humanity, and that's the way that it was designed. So that was the first book. Then I realized that Jews don't understand, because I didn't understand, that we're supposed to have this relationship with the nations, a healthy relationship where we are guiding them to connect to morality, to connect to godly wisdom, and so forth. And so the second book is called Lighting Up the Nations, and it's more for Jews, and it's about what is this thing that's our responsibility to share with the rest of the world. And the third book that I'm working on, I took a little time off, and then I got caught up with some other things, but I'm partially the way through that. It's called Women from the Nations in the Hebrew Bible. And here's what I did. I picked 10 women in Tanakh, 10 women in Hebrew scriptures that were not born into the Israelite people. And people that come from a Christian background, excuse me, I'm not used to talking this early in the morning. People come from a Christian background, they know Bible stories, but they don't know what Jews know about the Torah. And so I picked these 10 women. Some of them do turn out to join the Israelite people, and some of them not. But I do have these 10 stories, and I'm exposing, excuse me, I'm deepening their understanding of these Bible stories to tell the full story the way that Jews understand it. Okay, so that's what I'm working on. And I want to end with these 3 life lessons. I'm in this generativity stage of life. Piaget has all these different stages that we go through, and I'm older. And I've accumulated, I like to think, some wisdom by going through everything that I've gone through. So here's the 3 lessons that I plucked out of my life to share with you. One is to have boundaries, to know what you can compromise on and what you won't ever compromise on, even if there's a cost. This was true in the story that I told you of why I never finished that master's degree in Jewish history, because I didn't want to take a class that I thought was antithetical to my beliefs. It's also true that I've turned down work, very lucrative work, on more than one occasion, because I apologize. Give me a second.
That's okay. We're totally inspired and awed by what you're saying, even though you're coughing. That's all good.
Thank you. Anyway, so there are sometimes costs that come associated with having boundaries, having principles, but it's very important in the sense of somebody's personal integrity to have these boundaries, and to know what your boundaries are, and to know when an opportunity that's being presented to you is going to require you to cross a boundary that you're not comfortable crossing. That's number 1. Number 2, to be driven by passion. What lights up your soul? What ideas fascinate you? These are your guiding lights for how to direct your energy in life. And I'll tell you, just going all the way back to my college years, I didn't know what I wanted to study in college. So here's what I did. I went through the college catalog, and the University of Maryland is a massive state college, and the college catalog was very, very thick. And I went through every course description, and I circled the ones that looked like courses I wanted to take. And then I majored in the department that taught the most of them. That's how I decided. I was driven by what fascinated me. And I ended up, as an undergraduate, I studied speech communication. The third thing, so have boundaries, be driven by passion. And the third lesson is this, and that is learning never ends. In the 1980s, there was in the US, there was this 15-cent stamp that was circulating. It was kind of ugly, actually. It had 4 squares in various shades of orange and the words learning never ends. And that's been a central theme in my life. Never stop learning, never stop growing, never stop thinking new thoughts, never stop trying new things. That's where all the juice in life is. And so have boundaries, be driven by passion, keep learning, keep growing. Those are my 3 life lessons that I am happy to pass on to you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning.
Amazing, Rivkah. I love your energy. And the truth is, your 3 life lessons are my 3 life lessons as well. So we're very similar in that respect, in terms of I don't do something if I'm not passionate about it. And I think we all feel, and there's so many passionate people in this forum today, and friends and people that I know that join our networking groups. And when we're passionate about something, then we'll go all out, ad asaf, as they say in Hebrew, in order to do it. So I totally gel with you. Also about the whole learning thing, like always wanting to learn more. And yes, I'd like, firstly, your energy is amazing, even though it's in the morning and you're not used to being on screen in the morning. And never mind, I don't know about being awake. I'm also a night owl like you, but I find your energy amazing. And just the fact that you and Rav Ilan do so much. And I've personally benefited, and many of these people in the forum here too, who have met you personally, have benefited from your book swap. I still have so many of the books that I picked up from that book swap. And I love following when I see, even though I'm not living in my Leodumim anymore, that it's still going on, even though you're no longer there and you've taken it to the next place. So that's amazing. Parsha Slam, I also took part in once, I remember, and it was incredible. So just keep on doing the amazing stuff that you're doing. And my message and my parting message to you, just before I announce who our speaker is for next week, so don't log off yet, is exactly what Rivkah said, her life lessons. Think and take what Rivkah said and what drives you. Yes, we need to have boundaries. What are your passions? What do you still want to do? And yes, as I say every week, and with all our incredible speakers, every single one of us can make a difference. And Rivkah, you have certainly made a difference. And I can't believe you've only been here 15 years, because you're so part of this country and Am Yisrael. And your name is so well known out there. So it's hard to believe that it's only is a long time, 15 years, but that it's only 15 years. So number one, thank you so much for being our guest, for inspiring us, for sharing your story with us, and for giving us food for thought, which at the end of the day is what we want, that we can, when we end off the session, think about what did Rivkah say and what can I do in my life that can have more impact, make more impact, and be an even better person and for Am Yisrael. So thank you so much. For next week, we have a lovely speaker. Many of you know her, Nechama Myers, formerly of Jerusalem, now living in Netanya, who founded the organization, the Amotah, called Alinu, which helps different Olim in different missions. And next week, we have a double whammy, as I call it. We have our weekly Monday Motivation that leads into our monthly Professional Women's Networking Forum. So we're having a panel, many of you have seen the adverts, on integrating wellness strategies into successfully managing your life, business, and productivity, with 3 amazing speakers. So block of Monday morning next week, Monday the 18th, B'ezrat Hashem, will be starting from 9 to 9:30, the Monday Motivation, and then going through until 11 o'clock for the Professional Women's. Thank you once again, Rivkah, for being a fabulous speaker. Thank you to you all for joining live. Thanks to our co-host ACI, and to our sponsor of the month, Kim Bash. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Am Yisrael Chai. Have a safe, shaked week. Thank you again, Rivkah. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.